Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. All right, hi everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 5x3 Radio. Today is Monday, and we had originally planned this podcast for last week, but somebody forgot to hit record. So we got about half an hour into our nice discussion on squatting, and I realized that I hadn't been recording anything the whole time. So we just used that as a practice session. We're going to try and recreate
it with some sort of authenticity, as though it were the first time we were discussing this.
Exactly. And I told Rebecca, I said, well, that was practice run, so now we can make our notes and we can do another run. So this is take two of our radio podcast today. So before we get into it, I wanted to say that, so one of my members was quite disappointed, unhappy with my discussion of straps in our last episode of gear.
Oh, really?
Yes, Jesse.
Why?
This is a shout out to Jesse. Because he uses straps, and it sounded like I was against them. I am not against straps. Anybody?
Oh, yeah, no.
I mean, if you want...
straps all the time.
Rebecca uses them all the time.
All the time, because I'm not competing anymore.
So I'd say straps are they can be certainly an essential tool to have in your gym bag to not give out your grip, especially as the weight's getting heavier. I mean, I just don't seem to. I'm not deadlifting a lot of heavyweight people these days, right? As Gretchen and I said the other day, we are two older middle-aged women.
Yeah, you're not though.
So we have to be mindful.
You keep forgetting
what
that
we do.
I'm older than you when you say these things.
What we do, what we pick up, that kind of thing. So it doesn't even doesn't register to me, what I use. I mean, I'm like, if I can hook grip the bar and pick up the weight that way, I don't need to worry about using straps. But if I were to pick up heavier weight and my grip wouldn't give it out, wouldn't be there, and if I actually just practice with them, that's one thing. But I don't want to practice with them, so it's like I'm learning Spanish now, and I'm actually practicing and taking classes, so I'm not just winging it.
What do you mean you're taking classes? Where are you doing that?
Online.
You're not just, you're doing...
No, I do 3 days a week.
Or something.
No, 3 days a week,
Ooh,
45 minutes a day. Wow. So that's why today I don't have class, so I'm able to do the podcast with you on a Monday, because I don't have class.
That's exciting.
But Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 o'clock, I am speaking hablo español. Yes, I finally, and I love it. I love my teacher. I'm enjoying it, and it's only taken me 18 years of dating and then being married to a Spanish speaker to actually start to learn Spanish. Don't anybody judge me. I'm doing it now, and that's what matters. We thought we would come back around, and this was a great idea from one of my coaches, to just a discussion on the different lifts. So we're going to start with the squat today, and we thought a quick and simple podcast to talk about key points, key helpful cues to think about when you squat. I really like the squat discussion that we do at our camps. That Diego, he does the lecture. Yes, we have a practical component to the camp, but there are some definite cues and certain instructions that we give people that will help their squat immensely. Will help, especially beginners who are learning this. And so Rebecca and I thought a nice discussion on just some key points, some bullet points to think about when you are squatting. Would you like to take it away? I know that we have a couple points here. What we want to kind of talk about first. You want to start off, or you want me to start off?
You start, Emily.
Me start? Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, we don't have the video camera.
We don't. We're not looking at each other today. Today is kind
strange.
We're talking on the phone, which is, very, very strange because nobody talks on the phone anymore, do they? I mean, I do.
Well, FaceTime. right?
FaceTime. So even then, you're seeing the person, which is great, which was actually really nice during the 2020, 2021 years when you couldn't see anybody.
Anywho, but squat.
But now, anyway, moving on. So setup. Let's just talk about the setup first. And this is for any type of squat we're talking about. We're going to use a low bar squat as an example because that is the squat that Rebecca and I use predominantly with our clients. That's where the bar sits a little bit lower on your back. But high bar squat, front squat, I don't think it matters really when we talk about just the squat. You want to think about a setup. You always want to think about your setup, and you want to try to replicate that setup every single time you get under the bar. So if we're using the low bar as an example, and we're going to call it just the squat because that's what we do. But we are talking about the bar placement a little bit lower. Some key points to think about with the squat. So you want to make sure that your setup is on point. You want to place your hands where they're going to be every single time that you get under the bar, right? Whether that is a fairly wide grip, if you have some inflexible shoulders and some mobility issues, or that's a narrow grip if you are flexible. So your grip matters where you place your hands on the bar, but you want to try and find that position every single time. And it can change. Let's say it starts off very wide and then you find yourself as you warm up, you can move the hands in a little bit, do so. But make that part of your routine, right? I definitely noticed that about myself when I had to take a little wider grip due to some shoulder issues. I would start off fairly wide, and then slowly as I would warm up, I could move my hands in. And I did that every single time because every time I got into the bar, when I was, fresh, I was tight still. Yeah. Things needed to warm up. So that's what I was. So I would just kind of start to move my hands in. So placing the hands, try to replicate that every single time. It's just not kind of wishy-washy. Think about how you're grabbing the bar. Go ahead.
Do you ever have people who are brand new to barbell training? Because I have this, and yes. I've had this a couple times, and it just strikes me as odd. But it's more than one time, right? Like you've got the markings on the bar, and you'll have people who are like not any barbell background or experience, kind of just placing their hands willy-nilly without any sort of attention to whether they're symmetrically placed on the bar.
Yes.
So, maybe like one hand is over near the markings and the other one is right smack in the middle of the knurl.
Right.
So totally not even symmetrical on the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always find it to be interesting. Like, you're trying to get this weight balanced on your back and sometimes people even need that even placement on the bar to be something
exactly. I mean, there is a technique, right? There is technique involved with this type of training, this exercise, this sport. There's technique involved with taking a ballet class. There's technique involved with jiu-jitsu. There's technique involved with soccer. Anything that requires you to hold something or move something or kick something, there is going to be technique involved, and you want to establish a proper routine. Right, a proper setup for you. And everyone's routine is going to be different. But when you find one that works for you, you want to try to replicate that over and over again, right? So definitely your grip on the bar. Now, your grip could be a thumbs over or a thumbs around. That doesn't really matter. I'm not concerned with where you grab the bar.
We sort of talked about that at one point before, and that's got a little bit more to do with, it might have considerations about, range of motion, or it might have elbow pain or shoulder pain or something like that. But, where you're putting them on the bar in relation to each other and in relation to the markings on the bar, is kind of more what you're talking about.
Exactly. And when you find that grip, you can play around with both, right? I have people who kind of try to figure out which grip works best for them, and they'll know right away. Once you've established it, keep it. I mean, sure, you could always go back to one, but if that really works for you, there's no reason why you need to squat with the thumbs over when thumbs around works just as well, if not better, for you, right? I tell people the thumbs over is not part of the how to squat. It's just a grip.
It's just, I guess, to some degree, maybe that comes back to the discussion maybe about straps in a way. Like people have these ideas of what's the proper way to do it. Right. And it's hard sometimes to get people to realize like, oh, well, it is okay to go ahead and use straps at this point if your grip is giving out, or it is okay to do thumbs around if that's how you can get the bar on your back without causing yourself pain and
Yeah, I mean, the only reason for the thumbs, over is, and we've talked about this before, teaching people that the bar is supported on their back. Because if you grab the bar with the thumbs around, oftentimes people who are new will let the bar just sit and roll into their hands, and then it produces a lot of force on their wrist. Yeah. That's really uncomfortable. Once they understand that it's not the hands, quote unquote, that are holding the bar, but the back, then the wrist issue kind of goes away. The wrists can be bent. They can be bent. They won't hurt if you are properly supporting that bar with your back. Right. And that goes along with where the bar is placed on your back is part of your setup. And you want to place that bar there every single time. And it might be different for different people, right? Some people, I teach people to, step under the bar and slide the bar down to the little shelf that your back will make when it's below the spine of the scapula. But other people find that taking two legs under and getting set up that way works best for them. Again, it's going to be determined by just you and where the bar sits on your back, how, where you can find it, where you can keep it tight, but you try to find that same place every single time, and you do that by getting under the bar the same way every single time. Don't change it up. Don't just, willy-nilly get under the bar. I like, when you said about grabbing the bar with their hands, there should be a specific way that you take to get under the bar, find that bar, let it settle on the back, and take a few moments to really make sure that the bar is placed where you want it to be. I think people they tend to rush.
Where they sort of like duck under the bar, immediately stand up and step back in sort of like one fluid motion instead of like, okay, does the bar feel placed properly?
Exactly.
Because sometimes if you haven't totally unracked it yet, you can notice if you've accidentally misloaded your bar.
Oh, yes.
Got distracted halfway through and didn't add like the 10-pound weight to the other side as well.
Yeah. I've seen quite a few people do that in the gym. Get on the bar, start to stand up, put the bar back down, take a step back and go, I forgot a plate, or oops, I put the wrong plate on there. And sometimes people will do that and they'll come back out and the plates are just fine. It just feels a little weird. So better to re-rack the bar and then try again instead of just kind of just saying, well, the bar's there. No, the bar may not be there. But then you want to try to find that rhythm every single time you do that. I like watching Grace get under the bar for her squats. She has a thing. She pulls herself under, with one leg. She gets the other leg under. Then she rocks a little bit onto her heels. Her toes come up off the floor, and then she stands up. And she does it the same way every single time, no matter what the weight is on the bar. She does it with her empty bar, her 95 pounds. I love it. She has figured out what works for her. Someone else doesn't do that. Someone else, steps under with one leg, pulls the other leg under, moves around, stands up, moves around, stands up again, moves around. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do as long as that bar is secure by the time you stand up and walk back. So what I'd like to turn it over to you now. We've done the setup, we've done the grip. What about unracking the bar?
Well, we're kind of talking about that a little bit, like, take it slow and in steps. Yep. And think of it as separate movements as opposed to a fluid motion. So get that bar positioned, be confident of where it is on your back, squat it up out of the rack. And then I usually tell people take 2 steps backwards, by which I mean 1 step with your left foot, 1 step with your right foot. Right. And kind of in an ideal scenario, going from, like a regular standing position where maybe your feet are a little closer together, maybe they're parallel or forward facing. And then when you step back, you get your right foot set into its squat stance and then your left foot set into its squat stance. So not like taking a big walking journey with the bar on your back. Some people will take 2 steps, 3 steps with each foot, sort of look around, check their feet out with their eyes, like duck their head down, bars like swinging all around on their back. So, that's a conversation that I often end up having with a person who's a lifter. Like learning to feel with your body when the bar is in the proper position, when your feet are in the proper position, rather than looking at those things with your eyes. So, when you take those 2 steps back, they're substantial enough that it sort of sets you up in the middle sort of just in the middle of your safety arms, right? Or like if you're not using safety arms, you're in the middle of your rack, so you got your pin and pole on either side and you're right in the middle of that. You want to be far enough back that you're not going to like smash into the J cups or anything like that when you're squatting, and be nice and centered in the safety arms.
Exactly.
But not so many steps that you've exhausted yourself because, I don't know, you decide to take a trip with the bar on your back.
Right. I think if you're inside the rack and you try to do that, the rack is going to stop you.
Yeah, that's true. If you're in the rack, that will happen. But I have had people with safety arms where they'll walk back like 2 or 3 steps, and then I'm like, okay, let's put the bar back in the rack. Let's talk about this for a minute. So walk those 3 steps back in, and then we sort of go through, like I said, take 1 step back with each foot, 2 steps back, right? Like you want to be inside these safety arms. Right. You're way over here.
Yeah, I use safety arms not in the beginning of anybody's training as a I don't talk about using the safety arms for the purpose of obviously catching the bar. If you miss the rack, I don't, because I don't want to freak anybody out. I never do that. I never talk about the bar. And this is when you miss a rep, a rep that's way later down in their training. But I do use the spider arms as this sets you up. This is your place. This is your your what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of this. This frames your This frames you. So you don't want to go past them because again, you don't want to travel too far with the bar, because then you have to travel that far to get back into the rack. So right, and they kind of go, oh, that makes sense. They don't ask me what the spider arms are for, especially brand new people. Down the road, we'll talk about it. But in the beginning, it's just to frame their space. So yes, don't take so many steps that you're all of a sudden 25 feet away from the bar, because that just means you have to walk that much further to get into the rack. Coming out of the racks, you talked about standing up, walking back. What do you say when people stand up and as they're walking back, they hit the J-cups with their bar, with the plates, with the plates hit them? What do you? They kind of get startled.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that happens from time to time, but I think if you sort of approach it a little bit more in steps, like first thing you're just going to squat it up and you're not going to immediately start moving, because once you start moving back, if you go from squatting it up to stepping it back altogether, that's when you're more likely to get a little bit of lateral shift or movement from one side to the other. So step 1, the 0th rep, squat it up, pause for a second, and then step back. And step, like, so step back, straight back.
And also exactly, if you start walking back before you've paused, right, before you've stood up and stopped it, like as you said, the 0th rep, it's the very first rep, it's the quote unquote first rep out of the rack. That's your first squat. And your chest isn't squeezed up enough. If you're not tight enough under that bar, you'll know right away, because if you stand up and you pause and you walk back and you still hit the J-cups, oftentimes I'll just wait. I'll let the person do it. I don't say anything. They'll do their set. They'll walk it back in. I'll say, so why do you think you hit the J-cups? And they'll kind of look at me like, what do you mean? I said, I noticed you kind of got startled. I said, you weren't tight enough. I said, your chest wasn't open enough. I said that you have to use that time to really make sure that bar is secure on your back. The next time they do it, they stand all the way up, the chest is out, everything's tight, nothing. They don't even come close to hitting the J-cups. So if you find yourself hitting the J-cups as you're walking out of the rack, are you tight enough? Could you be tighter? Most likely you haven't stood up all the way. Most likely you're not as tight as you could be. It's kind of like taking the slack out of the bar when you deadlift. Sure, the bar comes off the floor. Could it have come back up better? Could you have been tighter, in that first rep? So I'll oftentimes I won't have the person re-rack it. I'll just talk to them afterwards. Why do you think you hit the J-cups? And then we talk about what they need to do, and that's how they start to understand what standing up all the way means, and what tight back or big chest means. That bar has got to be secure on your back. It's going to be you holding it there. And that's really hard for many of us who aren't used to standing up, right? We're slouched all the time. We're constantly hunched over things. So that's a lot. That's why people come away from their squat sessions with their back and their shoulders hurting them more than their legs.
Well, yeah, I mean, middle of your upper back, your T-spine, like between your shoulders.
Exactly.
Legs. Not to be confused with the part of people's backs that they associate with being uncomfortable when they squat, which people usually think, oh, I'm going to hurt my low back.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the muscle soreness that Emily is talking about. Like muscles that are usually like slouchy that actually more.
Yeah, your posture, like your traps. Yeah, and your all the upper back. That's what's holding on that bar. And for many people, they're not used to doing that. They're not used to holding weight back there or standing up and using their back. There's so much back work that's done in all these exercises. People forget, like, we don't train what we don't see, and that's so true. And that's why we do so much extra back work with a lot of our clients. So set up, grip, unracking the bar, taking the 2 or 3 steps back, getting set, getting placed. Okay, so next step. So some key points to actually doing the squat.
Say that again.
What are some key points to actually executing the squat? So now we've got everybody kind of back out of the rack. We're tight. We're placed correctly. Our legs are, shoulder width apart, toes turned out 30, 35 degrees, whatever they need to be. What's sort of some key points to think about when you're actually executing the squat now?
Yeah. I mean, I guess when we talked about this the first time when we didn't record it, like the 2 cues or the 2 points of focus that I find I use most often with people or that are pretty helpful for people. One you've already talked about, right? Which is like that Superman chest, get it, right. The chest open, the shoulder blades kind of pulled back and down, the bar solid on the back, that kind of thing, the Superman chest and the rigid torso along with that. And then the other thing I like to point people's attention towards is their feet. Because if you're doing your squat and if you're following that master cue and keeping the bar centered over your middle of your foot, your center of balance, then you're going to have equal pressure in your toes and your heels. You're not going to be forward in your toes. You're not going to be back in your heels. So like, sometimes if you have somebody who will send their hips back before their knees start to travel forward, they'll end up having toes come up at the beginning of the squat, then they get back to the bottom, to the depth, and their heels will come up at the bottom. So if you think about equal pressure in toes and heels, and then also even pressure on the arch side, the big toe side, and the big toe side of the foot. A lot of times when you get people with the knees caving in or the knee valgus, if you can cue them to keep pressure on the outside edge of their foot, that will help them to get their knees shoved out. And sometimes I think for people, having to focus on something that is only as big as their foot instead of something that is as big or as complex or as many moving parts as there are with squat, takes the problem and makes it a little bit smaller to focus on, makes it seem a little bit more manageable. And plus with your foot on the ground, you're getting that tactile feedback, that proprioceptive feedback from the floor about where your weight is. And that's something that people are often more easily able to clue into or to pay attention to.
Yeah, so finding that position, finding your stance is essential. Like you can't be farting around trying to figure out where your feet are, right? Where your legs are. And that's part of that setup too, because you don't necessarily have your legs set up in the shoulder width position under the bar, right? Usually you have a much narrower stance and the toes are pointing forward. You stand up from there, then you walk back and you actually take your stance. So if you're still trying to figure out where your legs should be, and many people when they first start training are doing that, right? They're doing a little dance.
Yeah.
Well, eventually that dance has to be set. Stop choreographing and set it, because then When you find your stance, you're doing exactly what Rebecca's talking about. You're then finding your feet underneath of you, right? Your legs are underneath of you. Your feet are planted. You can feel your toes in your heels and where the middle of the foot is. That takes practice. That takes you replicating that same setup every single time. And you have to practice it. I tell people that all the time. You will find that stance fast. You'll find it sooner. You'll find it eventually. It's going to take some time as you're learning where the right position is for you. And I say for you because it might not be the same position for somebody else, right? But that means, and that's your coach also watching you, if you have a coach. If you don't have a coach, it may take you videoing yourself to see, okay, that's really the best place. You know, you can also tell it too. You can feel it when you're squatting. So feeling that grounded feeling is essential, and it only happens if you find that same stance every single time that you're when you're squatting. So you've got your legs underneath of you. I don't necessarily do this on the very first day, second day kind of thing, you know, when talking to people, but eventually I will talk to them about how to get tight and where to start getting tight from. Do you find a lot of people will rock onto their toes and lift their heels up to get tight? Do you see that?
I don't know that I've ever noticed that.
I see it.
I see that more with just people starting the movement, the actual movement pattern, where the toes will rock up.
I will see people thinking that they're getting tight and they'll rock onto their toes. They kind of like do this little like lift of the heels off the floor.
I mean, I can imagine that. I could see that.
You see that? Yeah. So I've seen that definitely with some dancers when I've taught dancers how to squat, because that's kind of, you'll see that in the ballet class. Yeah. You'll see people prepare and the heels might, because with dancers, you're talking about they're floating, right? They're supposed to be this ethereal creature. So there's always this feeling of like lift up. Well, I tell them like, stop that. We don't do that in here. Keep your heels on the floor, but it's not just dancers.
Also probably ties in with, there's a cue that you give people later on about getting their breath and getting tight.
Yes.
Where you differentiate between, like, a lot of times people, when they get a breath, they don't understand diaphragmatic breathing, and they're breathing up into their shoulders, up into their upper chest. And so they're lifting in order to get a big breath. And so I would imagine if you're lifting and you're doing that, whatever it's called, paradoxical breathing up into your shoulders, that you may also sort of lift up onto your toes, like, okay, here we go.
Exactly.
And now I'm ready, and I've got my air and my, whatever. I could see that.
And so I see that. So when I see that, and even if I don't see that, I'll start to talk about breathing, which I think is, kind of the next thing that you want to have, because you're taking the big breath when you walk out of the rack. You might let a little bit of that air out, and then you're going to get set again, right? You're going to get set before you come out of the rack. You get into your position, you let a little bit of air out, and now you're going to get tight again.
And I think that goes along too with this, I think you and I both coach people in ways to sort of force them to take time.
Yes.
And, take a breath, pause, step it back, get your feet screwed into the floor, get your breath again. Like if you have to get another breath or top it off or something like that, that slows the setup down, because so often I think with people, when they're new to barbell training, if they've got some sort of exercise background, it's usually something that's more like hip related or, AMRAP or, that kind of thing, where they think they need to speed through the exercise or speed through the set. And so sort of finding ways like that through cues to force people to slow down so that they're solid and they don't have to deal with momentum that they've added to the exercise. I think, those kind of take another breath.
Exactly. It slows it down. It slows the pace down. That's, definitely another key point we'll want to talk about. So once you've established your position out of the rack, I talk about getting set from the top down, especially if I see somebody rocking onto their toes, like to get set. Like you said, they're kind of like, okay, and here I go, right? And you kind of rock yourself forward. I said, no. Get set from the top down. Your legs are planted. Once those feet stop moving, they don't move. Once you're in position, they don't move. Now we're going to get tight from the top down. And I usually tell them, like, I want to see basically that breath. You're going to take a big breath in, and it's going to be, back tight, ribs down, abs on, legs tight, concrete feet. I'll say concrete feet, like feet planted on the floor.
Concrete feet.
Concrete feet. So, but I tell them breath from the top down. So there's that, and I usually would say I want to see the shoulders kind of rise and then clamp down when we're discussing that Valsalva breathing, right? Talking about the bearing down feeling and trying to get somebody to understand that.
Bearing down
really
is
tricking.
Well,
not bearing down, but taking a big breath and holding it.
Yeah, big breath and hold it.
Take a big breath and hold it. And I think when I say, for some people that bearing down though feel like they understand that it's not up here in their chest. It's not up in their throat. It's not. So they're not making chipmunk cheeks, right? It's just a kind of keep the breath into your belly.
Yeah, it's more like 360 diaphragmatic breathing. Like you're breathing yourself into a solid core, a solid canister. You're not breathing up into your neck or your shoulders, and you're not pushing down onto your pelvic floor either.
Right. No, it's just you take a big breath. Yeah, take a big breath, hold it. I'll usually use an example of a chocolate bunny.
Yeah.
The chocolate bunny.
Not the hollow bunny, the solid bunny.
Exactly. You got the solid bunny, and I'll push, I'll like hit my belly so you can hear it. And then I'll make a chocolate bunny, a hollow bunny. I'll suck all the air in like they do in Pilates. And you can hear a big difference between solid and hollow. It's not hollow. And one of my older clients just figured out, I thought she was breathing properly the whole time, and she was holding her breath. She just wasn't holding it in the proper place, and it made a huge difference in how fast her deadlift moved as a result. And it was like, I wasn't breathing that way. I'm like, you weren't? It was like, I thought you were breathing that way. She goes, no, I wasn't. I know I had told her that how many months ago or years ago, but it was quite a revelation to her. And all of a sudden things just changed dramatically. It was just something as simple as like remembering like, oh, that's the breathing.
Yeah, well,
and I know we talked about it.
That kind of breathing in hollow bunny thing is the thing that just gets encouraged by, whatever the culture at large, like make yourself look skinny kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold your belly in.
Exactly.
Look skinny, which is not, we're not trying to look a certain way. We're trying to be solid.
And I think that's why I like the ribs down, abs on cue, because that really does. And one of my women has talked to, I think we've mentioned this before, like taco. She thinks of it as a taco. For her, we call it just a taco. I have not heard
taco before. You're going to have to explain that.
Taco. Well, I guess taco is like ribs and abs, and it's like this feeling of like the taco shell kind of, closing together. At least that's what I think she thinks of.
Yeah, everybody has these strange visual cues. That wouldn't work for me. Like our taco shells are always cracking.
Soft. And I eat soft tacos, not even hard tacos anymore. So, but she has an image of taco. But I like the ribs and ribs down, abs on, which is just like in dance. Now we don't do that kind of breathing, but we don't want to have our ribs flaring. Right, when we're standing at the bar, we don't want to have our ribs flaring and our butt sticking out. We want to bring the belly button and the spine to, the ribs and the belly button together. So there's a feeling of just everything kind of, locking down. It's supple leopard. It's the bracing. It's bracing. That's what we're teaching somebody to do, is basically, learn how to brace properly. So yeah, shoulder, like back tight, bar tight in the back, ribs down, abs on. Tight legs, concrete feet. Now we're ready to squat. So once they understand that the getting tight comes from the top down, there's no more dancing around, shifting to the toes, lifting up the heels in order to get tight, quote unquote, to get tight. The breathing has to be from the top down, not from the bottom up. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that, but.
What, breathing from the top?
Yeah.
How so?
Because I think you want to and I'm just coming at this from the perspective of like pelvic floor health. You want to start with the bottom, get that stuff tight, get the transverse abdominals involved too, and get that all kind of locked down, right? So that everything from the bottom is locked up and down, right? So that you're managing pressure from the bottom end as well as the top end.
Yeah, but I think that if I try to tell somebody to get tight from the bottom up, I'm going to see them moving around with their legs.
Yeah, this is where I think the cueing for that initially just needs to be very general. take a big breath and hold it is kind of where I start. And then you sort of figure out who you're working with. And if you're working with people who, have concerns about pelvic floor health, maybe your cueing is going to be different. If you're talking about people who understand like a deep breath or that solid bunny thing, like your, solid abs, the cueing might be different. If you have somebody who's breathing up into their neck and shoulders, you might different cueing. But usually I think to start out with for most people before it gets into all of those kind of different various cues that people need based on what they're actually doing, big breath and hold it.
Yeah, I think just for anybody, they need to start thinking about that, and where the breath is, where they're really breathing, and it shouldn't be that complicated. You don't need to make it that complicated. A great video that we show all the time, and anybody who's listening, if you want to watch a really good solid video of somebody who gets set, and this is exactly how I like to teach people to get set in their squat, is to watch Mike Toucher. It's from about 10 years ago, but if you just kind of like YouTube Mike Toucher 700-pound squat or whatever, it'll pop up. It always pops up. And he's squatting in his garage, and he's beltless, and it's a great video because he films himself from the front. So you see exactly how he gets under the bar, where the breathing is, how he gets set, and it's exactly the same rep every single time he squats. It's 4 reps he does. And we show that every single camp. We've been showing that since 2015 at our camps. And I think he still squats. He still gets set up the same way. It might be a little bit different than it was 10 years ago, but it's pretty much the same. And it's just a good example of somebody who's showing who's replicating his squat for 4 singles. And that's something that we definitely, you and I both also cue, is once you get in position, once you get your breath, and that you do that first rep, the minute you finish that first rep, you let some air out, not all your air, but you let some air out. You get another big breath, you lock it down, and you go into the next rep. So you're doing 3 singles, 4 singles, however many reps you're doing, 5 reps, 4 reps, but you're doing, in a sense, 3 or 4 or 5 single reps. That's how you're going to make sure that you're getting to depth every time, that you're in the correct position every time. The biggest mistake people make is rushing their reps.
Well, and this gets back to what we were saying at the beginning too, right? Like the cue of get a breath or, get some air or whatever as a way to kind of slow a person down. And so slowing them down between reps, similar to slowing down the process of unracking and then hitting depth on your first rep, just making people pause, get tight, think about them as singles as opposed to, a mashed together squats that you're trying to hurry up and get through, even though that might be what your brain is trying to tell you want to do because the bar is heavy and you want to get it off your back.
Right. And that's what most people say. I just want to get it done. I'm like, you'll get it done better and faster if you're slower. And they're like, what? Because I always go back, and God knows if he actually really said this, but my friend Mike, who's a weightlifter, he's got a gym it was in PA, I think he's now in New Jersey, but he, when teaching me strongman, and I was working on the stone, he would say to me, Emily, fast is bad, right? Because I would fumble. I'm trying to get the stone into my lap, and I keep fumbling it. He said, fast is bad. He said, slow is fast, fast is good. And I was like, what? But I use that now all the time with people. I'm like, fast is bad, slow is fast, fast is good. So the slower, more deliberate you are with your setup, the faster you will be, right? Because you will be able to find that position every single time. So you discover it, like even with strongman, when you are deliberate with your setup, when you're deliberate with how you pick up a stone or how you pick up a sandbag or how you pick up the keg, anything, you have to be deliberate with your setup and your pick. That's going to make you faster. You're going to get that stone over the bar faster. You're going to get that keg up to your, over your head faster. But the setup is everything. The log, right? So it's slow, fast is bad, slow is fast, fast is good. And with squatting, it's the same thing, right? You have to be deliberate with your setup, which will help you be very clear with your execution of the exercise. So you finished your set, you finished your reps. What do you do now?
Yeah, so when you've got somebody who's kind of brand new to this, you end up with the opposite end of the same issue, right? Like you get somebody who's unracking it and they're trying to find their position with their eyes, like they're looking to their feet to find if they've got feet in the right position. They end up doing that with the bar when they re-rack it. So like you'll get people a lot of times brand new to barbell training who are trying to look first to the right. Did I get the bar in the J cup on the right side? And now to the left, did I get the bar over in the J cup on the left side? And meanwhile, the right side is like, dangerously close to falling out. Exactly. So what I always tell people when they're re-racking the bar is just imagine you're walking through a door jam, right? Nice. Like a doorway. You got a bar in your back, just walk through the door, walk it through the door. And you're going to use your ears, but you're going to use your ears same sort of pressure that you're using to hold the bar on your back is going to assure you that the bar is pressed up against the uprights then. And then you're going to do the opposite of the 0 with rep. You're just going to squat it back down. So you're going to just squat it to lower it into the, semi squat, like half squat, quarter squat, not even, to get it back down into the J cup.
I lost you there for just a split second a few minutes ago. I don't think I lost you. I don't think I lost too much of what you said, but the internet went out for a bit.
Oh, geez. Wait,
I was like, hello, Rebecca, where are you?
Yeah, no, see, and so we don't have the video on, so I couldn't see you frantically waving around, and thought it sounded different. Like
it was just
but the little red recording light is still on.
It's still on.
Like such a low-tech, high-tech thing.
No, it's just, I think we got everything. No, we got everything. No, exactly. I love that. Listen with your ears. I usually don't, I've never used that before but I do tell people walk into the uprights, and I'll explain what the uprights are, right? This is a J cup. These are the uprights. You're not going to hurt the uprights. You're not going to hurt the bar. I'd rather the bar, and then something happen to the rack than you get hurt.
Do you ever, get people, brand new to barbell training who are worried about but if I walk it right into the J, it makes too much noise, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
People who are, and I'm like, no, that's a good thing.
Yeah, make the noise.
Get
I want to hear
loud,
it.
take up space.
I will cue what typically happens, they either are trying to put the bar into the J cups, which, as you said, they put it on one side and then they just kind of blindly put the other one in, except it's not in, it's underneath the J cups. I'll tell people, walk it into the uprights, look right, look left, like you're crossing the street, and then put the bar down. A lot of times what happens is, too, the person who's new to this is the bar is starting to roll down their back, right? They're not tight because they're thinking about so many things. So the bar is now the bar is lower on their back than it was because their elbows are dropped. So if I start seeing that, I'll just, once they finish that last rep, I'll say, good, elbows up, right? Which usually just means, tight back, and the elbows will pop up, which will put the bar a little higher now, back to the position it should have been. Okay, now walk it in. Because if they walk it in with the elbows, if the elbows have dropped, the bar is now further down their back. They can't get it into the J cups either because now it's like hanging off of their back, and you'll see that too.
Yeah.
You'll see that. So I'll cue, all right, tight back. Okay, now walk it in. So basically they have to remind themselves, oh yeah, right, there's the bar. The bar is moving down my back. If I don't do this, I'm not gonna be able to I'm not gonna get the bar back into the rack, properly. I have a young dancer I'm working with who that's what I've been kind of cueing her. Usually it's people who are smaller, who don't have a lot of, muscle back there. So they're supporting the bar with their arms because the back's just not, strong enough or big enough yet to support the bar. So I have to watch out for that. But that's sometimes also the case of just making sure that they're tight from the beginning, which is like you unrack it, you do your set, you want to rack it the same way you took it out. If you can remember how you took it out, right? You took it out with a big chest, you got to walk that baby back in with the same big chest.
Yeah. So back to that Superman chest again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's always the back that, you're never going to have a relaxed, loose back with any of the exercises. It's just, obviously it doesn't work that way. So there's the squat. I think that pretty much, I don't know anything else that we want to cover. That is really the key. Those are the key points of, of your squat, whether you are low bar squatting, high bar squatting, front squatting. You want to make sure that that bar is secure on your back before it comes out of the rack. Once it's out of the rack, focusing on your foot placement, your eye gaze, whether you're looking forward, you're looking down, if you're doing, the bar's lower on your back, and then treating every single rep as though you were doing singles, so that you're replicating the same movement over and over again. That Mike Toucher video, I swear by that video. I love that video. It's just such a good, he sets up so well. I mean, he farts around a bunch to get under the bar. He kind of does a bunch of breathing. But once he brings that bar out and once he gets set, I mean, it's just like, it's like snapshot.
Right, yeah, like
it's
cookie
so
cutter.
clear.
One after
Yeah,
the other.
everything. And every rep looks the same. It's like, if you told me that, you definitely know, I know what I don't want to forget to say, because I was telling somebody this today with their bench. No matter the empty bar or 405 on the bar, you're gonna warm up the same way, and you're going to drill those warm-ups as if they were your heaviest set. So you're not going to just blindly and casually, warm up, not paying attention to your breathing, not paying attention to your setup, not paying attention to your grip. Empty bar or 405. Because
I guess like anecdotally, often it's like a warm-up set or a back-off set or something where somebody's not paying as close attention, where they're more likely a lot of times to, try and shortcut it and end up, tweaking something or whatever. Not to say that doesn't happen sometimes on a heavy set, but of course.
No, but that's usually, I mean, if you're going to half-ass your warm-ups, your work set weight's going to be half-assed.
Well, then you're practicing to half-ass that.
Exactly. And I would
you're establishing a mindset.
Yeah. It's like my warm-ups don't matter. Actually, they do. Your warm-ups matter. I would tell my dancers when they would, we would mark, and marking a dance piece means not going full out, right? We're going to go through the steps. We're going to go through the positions, the placement. Where do you have to be on stage? You can mark it, meaning you don't have to do the jumps, you don't have to do the leaps. But I would never tell them to mark their arms. I was like, you will never ever mark your arms, because that's really what people will see in the audience. They don't care about what your legs are doing, but they will care about what your arms are doing. So if you half-ass your arms in rehearsal, you're going to half-ass them on stage, and then you're not going to look as clean and precise. So it's the same thing here. If you're just going to treat your warm-ups like, they're just my warm-ups, well, your work set's not going to go nearly as well, because what you're doing is mentally and physically preparing yourself for that heavier weight. So get into a habit now of trying to fine-tune. That's your time to practice the movement too. And fix anything that you need to fix before you get to that top weight. So that's a key point to drive home to people too. Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm not coming
that we haven't talked about.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty. I mean, that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to focus on, just like key points for people. And this is whether you're training at a gym or you're training by yourself, or maybe you have a coach, and maybe what we've said is something that your coach has been trying to get through to you, and you're like, oh, now that makes sense. No wonder she told me to do it that way. And I was just like, whatever. These are we kind of use these coaching, key points to help our lifters with. I think that's it. That's all I have for me. We're going to be doing this for every single lift. So we're going to also cover, obviously, the deadlift and the press and the bench on our next few podcasts. So if you've got questions in regards to what we talked about today with the squat, please feel free to, of course, email me, Emily@5by3.com, or email Rebecca at
cornerstonestrengthmaryland@gmail.com.
This is really weird doing this without seeing you.
Yeah, I know. You should get your camera on your computer.
I'm gonna get my camera working because
here I go.
I got class on Wednesday and I need to see my teacher, or else it's gonna be kind of strange trying to talk to her in Spanish without being able to see her.
Yeah, your Wednesday is gonna be better than my Wednesday.
What's going on with your Wednesday?
Weigh-in.
Weigh-in?
For the
the animals.
For the animals.
The 4-H. Rebecca's part of a 4-H. Well, the girls are, which makes her part of a 4-H.
And it's already a disaster because they just came out with the time slots, and it's all just not working for us because yeah, Sadie's got a school concert that night. We'd asked for an early time slot. Now we're like freaking out because we got a late time slot.
Soon they won't have to deal with this.
Yeah, I can't wait. This stuff is just making me so sick this year.
Becca's been stressed out lately.
Hey, and if anybody likes bacon, let me know.
let her know, because she'll have something to give you.
Sell you.
Sell you.
Yeah.
Sell you.
And if anybody's got like a large property, doesn't want to mow it, thinks a goat would be useful, let me know.
I like bacon.
Yeah.
I'll buy some bacon from you.
Hey, you either got to find somebody else to go in on it with you, or you got to get yourself a freezer.
I'd probably get my dad. I'll talk to him about how much bacon he wants. The kids are coming this summer, so we got to feed them somehow. All right, that wraps up our podcast for today. Don't forget, Charm City Strong Woman is coming up June 12th, Sunday, June 12th. At 5x3 Training. You can certainly continue to support us through our fundraising page. There is a link in our profile for the podcast. So please do. Our t-shirt campaign ends this Friday. So if you're looking to get a t-shirt, you can still do so up until Friday, May 20th. And then, of course, you can continue to support us through donations through the fundraising page up through the date of the contest. Thanks very much, and we'll be back in a couple weeks with either another exercise or possibly a different topic. We might kind of do a back and forth, talk about this, then talk about that. Oh, and a couple weeks we're going to the seminar.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was just looking at my calendar. You got Charm City the weekend after.
The weekend after. That's right. So It looks like this podcast is coming out this Wednesday, and then the next one, hopefully, will be the first before we leave for Texas.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll be back in a couple weeks. Thank you, Rebecca.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to 5x3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5x3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.